Everybody. I think we can probably get things started here. So just to confirm, we are in the security track. We're going to spend a bit of time here talking about some of the great things about working in the security and fraud space when it comes to mobile payments, a couple of lessons here and there, and maybe a couple of strategies to think about as you go into more of the sessions later today. So I guess first and foremost, again, welcome to the security track here at MPC. I am Kevin Goschalk, the CEO and founder of a company called Arcos Labs. We are a fraud prevention company primarily in account security. We're the only solution provider with a credential stuffing warranty, $1 million guarantee on stopping credential stuffing. So something that we're very near and dear to our hearts about dealing with. And we work with a ton of very large companies like Microsoft, PayPal, Amazon, and many others. And that gives us really a great perspective on all the attacks that are really occurring against all the companies out there. And we learn a ton from our customers. We learn a ton from the attackers. And it's just an incredibly creative space, I would say, to work in, just with the the attack techniques and the processes that the bad actors really go through to figure out, how do I make money from this service that Arcos gets the opportunity to protect. So let's begin, shall we? First and foremost, I want to take us all back to 1996. Good place to start, to Independence Day, starring Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum. I'm sure some of you have seen this movie. If you've not seen this movie, well, you're about to be spoiled on this movie. It's probably a few years after its due date, so hopefully that doesn't disrupt anyone's day too much. If you have seen this movie, you will perfectly understand why we're talking about this in the context of security and fraud. It just makes perfect sense, really. So in the Independence Day universe, let's talk about what payment fraud looks like. This is what payment fraud looks like. It's pretty nasty, right? The aliens got what they wanted. They had their grand hurrah. And who commits this fraud in the Independence Day universe? Well, as we all know, we've all seen them time and time again. We've seen them in the media. This is what fraudsters look like, right? They're wearing a hoodie. They have the dark background. They got their laptop. We even managed to find a picture that hides Apple's logo so that they don't get upset about the branding. Or maybe you've seen this guy's brother. It looks like this. Or maybe not his brother. Perhaps you've seen his sister. Did the mask throw you? I bet it did. I digress. Of course, in the Independence Day universe, these are not what fraudsters look like. They're a little different. This is what the fraudster looks like in the Independence Day universe. This is the guy who's trying to get into your mobile payment app to commit fraud, make money, escape with that money, and go and buy a palace or something like that. Of course, it's a little different, perhaps stylistically, but the approach is the same that all fraudsters take. This guy, his job is ultimately to make a ton of money. And we're all here collectively to figure out, how do we stop these people from making a ton of money from us? And money to this guy looks like this, right? As we all remember from previously in this presentation. In our world, the way they actually get money out of our ecosystems depends on the use case. So of course, it's a little bit different. We have obviously a wide range of spectrum of companies at the MPC conference. Maybe defrauding you looks like transferring funds out of a wallet. Maybe it looks like money laundering. Maybe it's credit card fraud. There's a whole ton of different ways that bad actors go about actually extracting funds out of the ecosystem. And before they can extract funds out, what do they have to do? Well, they need to get in the first place, into the system's accounts or into the process. And this is what it looks like when a fraudster's inside your account, wandering around, trying to figure out, how do I make money now that I'm in here? Maybe they're going to do one of those avenues, transfer funds out. Maybe they need to make sure they pick the right time of day, or they have like other accounts they're going to transfer them to, all that kind of stuff. But before they can do that, just like the aliens in the Independence Day movie, the first thing they need to do is actually breach our perimeter defenses. And this is what the login system looks like to Earth. You got to get past here first before you can access Earth. If this picks you up with an invalid credential, well, as a fraudster, you're probably not going to get very far. Probably not going to make a lot of money if you can't get in the first place. And most of the fraud teams that I've met, had the opportunity to work with, really are focused on dealing with the outcome, the actual monetization piece of the attack, which is where the fraudster is extracting money out of the ecosystem, which is, of course, when the White House gets blown up, as we all know. And they're trying to figure out things like, where are the funds going? What were the, why did these funds get transferred? Why this account? But really, we need to be working, of course, and thinking about working with our security teams, our identity teams, to make sure they're not getting past the defenses in the first place. And, how might they get past our login systems so they can go down and get in and blow up the White House? Well, that's known as an account takeover attack. And of course, once they do that, they can then go and do all kinds of fun things. How would they, do an account takeover attack? Well, in the universe of Independence Day, there are several techniques you can use. One is credential stuffing, which is where you basically attack and leverage mankind's greatest weakness, which is people reusing passwords, unfortunately. A ridiculously large population, more than a third, use the same passwords across everything. That is a great vulnerability that you can take advantage of, because if one of the services you're in gets breached, then they can go about, of course, using that same password on other services you're in. And I saw some questions coming in. I will get to those as we kind of come along through this presentation. So first and foremost, how are we going to do credential stuffing? Well, basically the attacker will get leverage access to a bunch of data, usernames, passwords. There are literally hundreds of millions, billions even, of these that are already available for them to take advantage of. They'll set up a bot or a script, or maybe in this case, they'll set up some ships, and they will basically try and guess multiple usernames and passwords to try and find a valid pair. And of course, they're not just coming from a single IP address. They're not coming from a single device fingerprint. They have alien technology, so they're able to morph and adapt these requests using botnet proxies, unique device fingerprints, and other tactics like that to blend in perfectly with your regular everyday traffic. So of course, this problem gets a lot more complex when you're dealing with attackers that really know how to make their attacks look really quite human and quite normal. Another technique beyond credential stuffing is social engineering. So this is where, just like in the movie, where Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum flew a stolen alien into the mothership to pretend to be an alien so they could upload the virus. Basically, this is what kind of phishing is kind of like, where someone calls you and tries to pretend to be someone that they're not, and convince you to give your credentials to them, or to give maybe a multi-factor PIN to them. Maybe they already know your username and password because they did credential stuffing and they got prompted for MFA. Now they need to figure out how to get past that. So maybe they're calling you and pretending to be from maybe the bank that you bank at and saying, look, we see a breach in your account, just share the PIN with us and we can verify that that didn't occur. And in reality, you're giving them the ability to log into your account. So there's a number of techniques they use, of course, to do that. That's just one of those. But effectively, the concept of trying to convince you that they're someone that they're not, to get information to let them get into your account. Another account takeover technique is phishing, where you accidentally input your details in an alien system because you think it's harmless, or you've been fooled to think as such. Maybe you got an email link and you click it and it takes you to a fake landing page, which is not actually maybe your bank login page, but it looks like it is. And when you put in the details, you're in trouble. Kind of like that time these people thought, this alien ship was a beautiful, bright, shiny object. And they, thought their alien saviors had come to save them and make their life a great, experience. And unfortunately, when they put in their credentials, well, kind of warning, I guess, spoiler alert, it didn't really work out too well for these people that trusted the aliens. Yeah, the day was kind of not done so well. So I think the message here is never give up your credentials to aliens or access unusual websites from dodgy emails. That doesn't go well. And of course, all these things led to the aliens now getting inside our accounts. So now they're navigating around our account. And this is when they're going to figure out, okay, now that we're in here, how much money is in this account? What can I transfer out of this account? What technique should I use to do that? What's the lowest risk approach for me to get the most bang for buck in getting the most value out of this account before I get blocked or banned? And one of those techniques is payment fraud. So how do we stop all of this from occurring? It's a good question, of course. And that's probably why we're all here on the security and fraud track, to learn a little bit more about how do we stop aliens from attacking Earth. I'm sure you all expected that this would be what this presentation would be about. So that, of course, is where we, the fraud teams, come into play. As you can see, Jeff Goldblum is a member of the anti-fraud team, as we would expect. And you can see the backdrop here. He's got his plans that he's putting together to figure out what's the right fraud strategy to mitigate the threats that we're dealing with: compromised accounts, payment theft, application fraud. It's really on his shoulders to help us figure out how to do that. But he's not alone, fortunately. You can never forget the crazy data scientists you need to help you look through the data. The very important role with every fraud team is you got to have a data scientist to help you kind of sort through all of the information, all the signals. Is very important for our ability to find aliens, because who else can think like an alien, really? They got to think through like machine learning, pattern matching, all kinds of fun stuff. And alongside smart personnel, it also helps to have good technology in place, just like this. There's, of course, a number of different technological solutions to mitigating, detecting, identifying fraudulent activity, fraudulent transactions, things like device reputation systems, device fingerprinting, IP intelligence systems, which will give you a reputation on where the IP is coming from. Biometric signals is another way that people look at things today. User behavioral analytics. So how is the user going through an experience? Do they go from login and jump straight to like extracting funds, which maybe is not a normal pattern for that user? So maybe that's a signal that this is actually a bad actor that's in the account doing something that we wouldn't expect. There's also technology like machine learning, which really can help you look for those anomalous trends in data. So if you're seeing unusual, one of the benefits we all have in security is bad actors are kind of incentivized to look different to good users. And that's because that's how they make money. They make more money by doing things that are kind of unusual compared to regular customers. And that's an opportunity for all of us to look for those kind of patterns and signals and identify that behavior. And of course, all this technology really, at the end of the day, will help a fraud analyst or a fraud team in detecting and deterring fraudsters and aliens. And the other thing that's very important is you also need to remember that the place where they're ultimately extracting the value out, so i.e. doing the payment fraud, is really not where you want to fight the bad actors. So don't just fight the criminals in the payment extracting piece. You need to think about working with the identity and security teams to monitor and track bad actor activity all the way through the journey. In the vast majority of cases, you can do a much better job of stopping this guy from getting through your front door or your login satellites in the first place if you focus your defenses earlier in the experience. If you do that and we stop them there, then you'll obviously see less of this from happening, which it may be no surprise, but of course, bad actors and aliens alike always look for the path of least resistance. If there is an avenue of attack, be that web or mobile, they will always target that experience which has the lowest security. So for example, Area 51, or maybe your web experience, happens to be less prepared for attacks than your mobile experience. Maybe the theory is Well, we actually, we talked to a lot of fintechs where they actually don't even provide a lot of functionality on the web experience. All of it's just available in the app, but you can't even transfer funds on the web experience. So their theory is, look, we don't need multi-factor protection on login for web because we've got it in the app. And if someone tries to log into the web, they can't do anything anyway, so we're not too concerned about that. Of course, aliens are very smart, and they figured out that they can log in, maybe using credential stuffing into the website. And then once you've got a valid user authenticated token, you can just simply point that at the mobile app endpoints and transfer funds and do all the stuff that the app design wasn't really designed around. So attackers can figure out how to pivot and figure all the backdoors out. And they do this pretty regularly. It's a pretty known tactics now, because we've seen numerous fintechs, unfortunately, have less secure web experiences to mobile experiences. So boom, aliens are now back into your Earth and are able to do all kinds of things you don't want them doing in Earth. So remember, whilst we may be focused on the ultimate bad action, the White House being defrauded, we need to remember to work with our teams that are much earlier in the experience to stop them from getting in the first place. These really shouldn't be relationships you're forming during an attack scenario. We see that time and time again. They really should be a central part of your strategy that you're thinking through when it comes to payment fraud, mobile in-app fraud, security vulnerabilities. How do we work together to achieve the ultimate outcome of deflecting these bad actors? Because obviously we're all after the same goal: aliens blown up, because it's always the best part of the movie, or aliens maybe that don't bother in the first place because Earth is simply too well defended, so they'll go attack someone else's planet, which is a very boring movie comparatively because you don't get to see all the action. Maybe that's a movie they won't make. Probably wouldn't get off the pitch reel, I suppose. So as you get started today, thinking about payment fraud and mobile channels, remember that you need to be aware of all the avenues that they're taking. So web, mobile, earlier in the experience, login, signups, of course, as well. Because to aliens, all they really care about is getting in and getting out with a ton of money. So now you know what motivates aliens. Turns out it's US dollars. So I think, the moral of this story, now that we're getting close to the end here, if we're seeing alien ships, kind of flying overhead, we've probably got bigger problems than payment fraud to worry about. And for those of you who haven't seen Independence Day, Jeff Goldblum is really the hero here. Will Smith just kind of flew the ship. So that's a good takeaway to have. So that's our keynote. We have a couple of questions here. There's a question that came in earlier. I'll answer it now that we're at the end here, since we have a few minutes. The cyber criminals exploited a vulnerability in Polling Network, a platform that looks to connect different blockchains so that they can work together. What happened that we can learn? It is a great question. So there's always different attack techniques and tactics being figured out by criminals to make as much money as possible. No surprise there. In that particular case, there's always a 0-day or a vulnerability in these network stacks that attackers can take advantage of. I think it might be worth, if you have funds in a cyber crypto platform, always secure that with whatever things you can. Use multi-factor. Actually, in fact, best with blockchain networks and things like that is keep currency offline in a wallet. Don't actually keep it connected. So yeah, it's a good question. I guess I'd have to look up and get more details on what that happened in that particular case to offer more feedback there. But thank you all so much for attending this session, and we really hope you enjoy learning a little bit more about fraud and payments, and enjoy your day. Thanks all.